Kent Myers. I'm Mick Cornett, and it's time for the verdict.
As a part of its traditional and continuing commitment to public and community service, Crowe and Dunleavy Law Firm presents The Verdict, an objective discussion of contemporary legal issues hosted by Kent Myers. And also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma. And welcome to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett. Thanks for joining us. Let me waste no time in introducing my co-host, who just happens to be one of Oklahoma's top legal experts, Kent Myers. And Kent, we're back to revisit a discussion that we had last week.
Yes. We can call it a Tulsa Grand Experiment if you want. It's the city of Tulsa and their business leaders taking a proactive approach to trying to solve some problems that they envision not only in their region but in the state. They formed a political action committee called the Center for Legislative Excellence, and we're going to have the chairman of the Center for Legislative Excellence, Bob Poe, back with us this week, as well as Senator Hobson, who's joined us again. We're going to be talking about a few of the specific issues they're concerned about, such as education, such as transportation. And I think it should be very interesting. It will be interesting to see what the response is around the rest of the state once this political action committee starts flexing its financial muscles.
Well, and when you're trying to determine how powerful a political action committee is, usually the amount of money that they're able to acquire is one of the most significant factors, and this one is pretty well funded.
Well, it's about as well funded as you'll hear, at least from a standpoint of one that's local to the state of Oklahoma. And if you look at the list of contributors, they are basically the cream of the business crop in Tulsa. And Bob Poe has done an amazing job lining up people to try to help solve these problems.
Bob Poe and Senator Hobson will be joining us in a moment. It's a fairly unique concept, a political action committee designed by some City of Tulsa business leaders. We'll see what it's all about when we return. This is The Verdict with Mick Cornett and Kent Myers.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
I enrich our cultural landscape.
I help define our quality of life.
I am one of 4,000 artists in central Oklahoma who receive
support from Allied Arts, this community's united arts organization.
I am an allied artist.
In Oklahoma, there are more than 1,600 children waiting to be adopted. They're of all ages, and for many, home has been a source of pain and conflict. They've dreamed of finding a better life and a loving family. Consider adoption. For more information, call 1-877-OK-SWIFT or visit the website www.okdhs.org. Adopt. It may be the toughest job you'll ever love.
And Blankenship has stopped at the line of scrimmage. No gain on the play. Leaving it 4th and 7 on the Tiger 46-yard line. 38 seconds on the clock. The Tigers have no choice but to go. Wiggins in to do the kicking. Here's the snap. And the kick is away.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all of the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. Oklahoma Lawyers for Children has over 350 of the best attorneys and volunteers in Oklahoma County who donate their time and services to represent children. For more information, call 405-23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, who's here to introduce our guests.
Yes, on my right, return visitor, Senator Cal Hobson, Democrat from Lexington, Norman area. Senator Hobson is now making his 4th appearance on The Verdict and is a legislative expert on education funding and on funding in general for the state. And Senator Hobson, thanks for coming back with us again.
Great to be here again.
And on my left, an old friend from Tulsa, Bob Poe, making his 2nd appearance with us, the chairman of the Center for Legislative Excellence, a professional engineer by profession, and a Tulsa business leader for a number of years. Bob, thanks for coming back again.
Thank you.
Bob, let me ask you this question. We have discussed the Center for Legislative Excellence in our prior show and what it's attempting to do. Does this mean that that this pact becomes necessary because the governors of the past, the House and Senate leaders of the past, have failed Northeast Oklahoma or Tulsa, at least in part?
No, I don't think so. To me, the reason we are in existence is because there's an opportunity, given term limits, that kicks in, for the first time in 2004, and then those not caught in 04, 06, so that we'll have by 06, 63% of the House, 71% of the Senate that will turn over. Therefore, it hit us that we have a number of new legislators, new candidates that are going to be running, and we want to support the best ones that we can find. Clearly, issues that we have chosen, I won't say as a litmus test, but those that we have focused on are regional to Tulsa in 2 instances, and statewide in the instance of highway funding for the 3rd one. So we're looking for candidates that will have an interest in us trying to support, I'm not saying this very well.
You've got concerns and you're interested in getting legislators
right.
that will assist in those concerns, I take it.
Right.
Let me ask you this, and then I want to come to Senator Hobson for any thoughts he may have about this. Let's assume that a senator from Altus is up for, the Senate seat is up for election.
Yeah.
Is this something that likely would draw the attention of your group?
We plan to talk with candidates in every House and Senate seat statewide for the election cycle of 2002, 2004, 2006.
So you're talking with these legislators and deciding to make contributions or not, as the case may be, won't just be limited to Tulsa or the Northeast region, it'll be
exactly
statewide.
Right. That's exactly right.
Senator Hobson, what are your comments about that? Do you think that's appropriate for a regionally based political action committee to be extending its influence out beyond its own region through political contributions?
Well, I think they better, because there's not 51 votes in the House from the Tulsa area, and there's not 25 votes in the Senate from the Tulsa area, so you have to meet those thresholds to pass anything. And you find lines crossed. The senator from Altus, the real one that's alive right now, is a fine man named Bob Kerr. And he had a special interest in developing, replacing the Quartz Mountain Lodge that burned, as we all know. And so he was approaching folks in the Tulsa area that appreciate what that lodge does for the Summer Arts Institute. And so that's how those conversations start. And I would suspect that in that conversation, Bob would point out the challenge that they have in a seamless higher education system in the northeastern part of the state. So we all, as I said earlier, we all, if we're doing our job, are thinking about what benefits the state as a state. We have too much regionalism. We have too much urban versus rural, educated versus uneducated, rich versus poor. So I do not view this effort at all as a threat to democracy. I think it's a tremendous contributor to it, and the rubber will hit the road when we come to the point of having to finally decide what we do with limited resources.
Well, you just couldn't have led me into it any better, saying the rubber hitting the road. Let's talk about roads. Let's talk about transportation. I know that's one of the concerns of your center, Bob, is transportation infrastructure. Tell our viewers in understandable layman's terms what you mean by that and what your concern is.
First, our major concern, urban projects, highway projects, are very expensive. They're very complex, not easily subject to being built in phases. Therefore, it takes a lot of money to execute them. The PAC is not to the point yet, but my personal view, to distinguish it from where the PAC is at the moment, is that we are not going to be able to build in a timely way the complex urban highway projects that need to be built as a function of the revenue now available.
At the state level? At the state level. Or more particularly, it is just not practical to, even if one wanted to, which I do not advocate, to take money from the rural area and give it to urban projects so they can be built in a timely way. So what do we do?
So I think we have to have more revenue. I think we have to increase the diesel and the gasoline tax. I think we have to allocate those funds responsibly to both urban and rural so that we have enough money to build urban projects in a timely way. I'd also like to see a bond issue. Again, the PAC's not at this point yet. I'd like to see a bond issue voted on by the people that would provide the extra money to catch up for the degree we have gotten behind on maintenance. So have some reconstruction.
Cal, what do you think?
That's why I can do business with a man like Bob Poe. When we first met in my office at the Capitol, he didn't come, as others have, saying, you know, you're wasting money out in the rural areas where people don't live. Well, people live in the rural areas, and they feel like their section line road is just as important to them as I-240 is in Oklahoma City. He's right. We have an extraordinarily low gasoline tax in Oklahoma. We have a historically low gasoline price right now in Oklahoma, and I know this is not a popular position to join in the recommendation that additional revenues are necessary, but we could continue to lie to the public and say that we do, and then the next generation will have an even worse infrastructure than we are providing the current generation. So I admire his courage and vision, and I hope that we can again pull together both parties and not do the finger pointing that gets done so often in election years and step forward on this one area together.
Well, let me jump in here and get us to a break. We're discussing a brand new political action committee and how it's designed and who it's designed to help. This is The Verdict with Mick Cornett, Kent Myers, and our two special guests, and we'll be right back.
Yeah, campfire's a lot of fun. You get to make some friends. You get to do some cool stuff. Campfire's for boys too, not just girls. But hey, campfire's definitely for kids. So call the campfire office nearest you to join in on the fun. 'Cause let's face it, you're not getting any younger.
St. Gregory's University has been changing the lives of people like me for 125 years. Affordable, private Catholic education, balanced with dedication to community and service, makes St. Gregory special. We're extremely proud of our students' outstanding academic achievements and our nationally ranked athletic teams. It's when you help a student build a future of balance, integrity, and service that you change a life forever. St. Gregory's, a community for life.
Yesterday was plain awful.
You can say that again.
On Broadway is Oklahoma's premier youth musical theater company.
Bringing our daughter here was one of the smartest things we've ever done.
I've learned a lot. I've gained a lot of confidence. They helped me develop talents I never knew I had.
And it's fun.
On Broadway, Oklahoma's premier youth musical theater company. Now enrolling in Edmond. Call 330-CAST. That's 330-2278.
Every day, in state governments throughout the country, crucial decisions are being made that affect the lives of children and their families. But as this process takes place, children are often left voiceless. When these children raise their hands to be heard, is anyone listening? There are people listening. They are child advocates. Join us and raise your hand for kids.
Mick Cornett and Kent Myers back on The Verdict. We're discussing a new political action committee. Kent, where are we here?
We've talked about two of the concerns that Bob and his Center for Legislative Excellence have. I want to talk about the third now, and that's education. I want to bring up a graphic that is a quote out of a Daily Oklahoman article where Bob was quoted as saying that Tulsa is the largest city in the nation with no freestanding four-year public college or university. Bob, I think you may have a correction or so to that quote, but what were you meaning to tell people with that?
Tulsa, I'm told by experts at this, is the largest city in the nation with no publicly funded four-year institution of higher learning.
What would Oklahoma City's be? I mean,
you don't consider Norman.
Okay, I'm just wondering. So the University of Oklahoma is what you're comparing Oklahoma City?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Although certainly Edmond, there are a number of others as well. And I'm not trying to sing gnats here, as they say about 10 miles here or there.
Right. Neither was I.
I understand. But what I think is important is that Tulsa's premier pedigree, being a graduate of the University of Oklahoma, failing that, the University of Oklahoma State University. I mean, I said that since I'm an OU grad. I mean, those are the highest.
You just had half the viewers turn us off, but go ahead.
Those are the highest pedigrees that we can confer upon, our young Oklahomans. And just people may not realize this, but in Tulsa, Oklahoma University cannot provide accounting, nursing, and business courses, a number of business courses, by statute. And we're not talking about something that takes money here. We're saying that Tulsa should have access to the best that Oklahoma University can provide and the best that Oklahoma State University can provide in their facilities in Tulsa. And so we want to have the statute amended that prohibits certain curricula from being offered by those institutions in Tulsa.
Was this a turf issue? Is that what we're talking about here? Is that why there'd be a statute? Cal, help me out.
Higher ed is, I'll create a new word here, like President Bush, is turfish. No question about it. Tulsa has always been the entity that we kind of would hybrid opportunities through some mix of OSU and Langston and OU and Northeastern. And so the feeling of frustration is not a new thought emanating from that part of the state. And quite frankly, all of us should want Oklahoma to have more college graduates. It's one of the killer statistics in Oklahoma today that we're about 100,000 college graduates short of the national average. If we close that gap, we would do more for our per capita income than the fight about right to work ever will, just to bring up an old fight. And Tulsa is a hotbed of higher education learning, but we need a more coordinated, systemic opportunity up there. Some will take more money, some takes just simply more cooperation. And it's an area that, one of the two areas that I want to spend most of my time working on, presuming I end up being the leader of the Senate, and that is education and healthcare.
Are OU and OSU not working together in this instance?
I think there are days, certainly at the Capitol, where it's been difficult to have the leadership of the two universities in the same room, pulling in the same direction. And I don't mean the two presidents. I think that they are very effective at working together, at least when I've been invited to participate. But there can be the carryover from the football field or the basketball court into the world of academics, and I think that is generally unfortunate for the taxpayers of Oklahoma.
Well, let me ask Bob a question, but getting back to that quote, I don't want to pull it up again, but just get back to it. Is your center advocating that a new 4-year publicly funded freestanding institution be created in Tulsa?
No, not at all.
You're advocating expansion of the existing facilities there to make sure that all the courses that are available in Norman or in Stillwater are made available in Tulsa as well.
What we're saying is, let's get rid of, let's erase the chalkboard, get rid of all of the mores, and let's figure out what really ought to occur up there. Certainly, if you have the academic ability, you ought to be able to get a business degree in Tulsa with the University of Oklahoma. You ought to be able to use OSU's nursing program. Huge field. A lot of the people that can afford to be educated and then become nurses do not have the ability to live off campus or you know, I'm sorry, I'm not saying go to the University of Oklahoma and sit there and, or OSU and go away to school, and those are vitally needed jobs. So let's do the right thing. Let's organize it like it needs to be, not like, you know, the camel designed by a committee.
Yeah, well, so you'll be talking to candidates and rendering support or not, based upon, at least in part, their view about these issues.
Well, we will be telling them we want them to support these issues based upon their responses and the view of the committee within the PAC that will determine who gets the funding. We will make contributions to candidates.
Let's pull up another graphic, if we may, and look at the enrollment in Tulsa's institutions of higher learning. They're not, some are public, some are private, but as you can see from those graphics, at least within the city of Tulsa, in 4-year institutions, there are in excess of 12,000 students enrolled currently, and if you add the 2-year Tulsa Community College, that presumably could send people on to 4-year universities, there are almost 33,000 students in the Tulsa area enrolled in higher education. Senator Hobson, is that adequate coverage for Tulsa's population, or should what Bob's suggesting be implemented?
Well, Tulsa is the largest city in the country without a publicly funded 4-year institution, so I'm sure that it's not the perfect design. It has grown up through the years, through legislative wars and battles, gets elevated to the top, there's a little fix, bubbles back down. I think it's refreshing that we would take a clear, slate board erased view of the educational system top to bottom in higher education, because we're going to get a new chancellor too.
Let me put you on the spot here.
Just a few seconds left.
It'll be a small spot. If you're President Pro Tem in 2003, will you make sure the Senate brings about that?
I'm going to do my very best to ensure that we provide opportunity for all Oklahomans, regardless of the part of the state they live in, and Tulsa, I think, is uniquely challenged.
All right, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Mr. Poe, Senator Hobson, thank you both for coming by. Kent and I'll be back with a few final words when we return. You're watching The Verdict with Nick Cornett, Kent Myers, and our special guests.
Hello, my name is Ted Smith. I'm president of the board of directors of the Oklahoma Disability Law Center. ODLC provides free legal services in civil matters to people with physical and mental disabilities.
I'm Mike Sykes, vice president of ODLC. For more information, call 1-800-880-7755.
The Oklahoma Disability Law Center provides high-quality legal services to people with physical and mental disabilities.
Boy Scouts of America, where above all else, character counts.
Bringing out the best in each student. That is the simple goal and tradition of Heritage Hall. The focus on the individual shapes the educational experience at Heritage Hall. Each student benefits from small classes, able, dedicated teachers, a solid academic curriculum, and exceptional co-curricular programs of athletics, arts, community service, and other activities. Parental involvement, personalized counseling, and the development of responsibility, integrity, and love of learning. If you want education taught with pride, then you want Heritage Hall.
We are wrapping up another edition of The Verdict. Glad you're with us. Kent, some final thoughts?
Tulsa has come up with an idea, I think, of the Tulsa business leaders that is simply in the form of a political action committee, but in some respects it's unique. They are finding a different way to, if you'll pardon the expression, skin the political cat. And they have outlined some regional and statewide issues about which they're very concerned and have decided to put their money where their mouth is, as we have said, and try to see that legislators pay attention to them and pay attention to those issues. And it will be interesting to see in this coming session and in the coming years just how this approach turns out to be successful or not.
And if it succeeds, Ken, there'll be copycats. There'll be other regions that will decide to have their own paths, will there not?
There will be. Whether they can rise to the level that Tulsa has done from the standpoint of the very significant financial commitments they've received or not is probably questionable. But to the extent that they are more limited, perhaps their resources will match what their expectations are.
Let's remind people about our website.
Yes, please look into our website, www.theverdict.tv. We have a question posed there about today's show, and we really would appreciate the viewers checking in with us, letting us know what you think. There's a place on there now, Nick, to write some comments. Not only vote, but write your comment. It is. And just say you don't like my tie, or you don't like the subject, or you want something different, or you want a chair thrown now and then. Whatever it is you're interested in telling us, tell us, and we'll see if we can accommodate you.
And we'll see you next week on The Verdict. This program was brought to you by Crow and Dunlevy, a professional corporation. And also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma.